Love is in the air, and I've got a recipe that's about to sweep you off your feet. Hey you guys, thanks for tuning into this video where I'll be sharing a fantastic recipe for some seriously swoon-worthy cookies, just in time for Valentine's Day. So delicious with a hint of strawberry, these are not your typical sugar cookies. These have the perfect texture and flavor, and I can't stress enough on how easy they are to make with just a few ingredients. Before we dive into this recipe, if you haven't already, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. I've got a date with your feed every single week, bringing you new recipes and decorating tutorials. So without further ado, let's dive into these romantic delights. In a bowl, combine and whisk the dry ingredients together, which are flour, baking powder, salt, and cornstarch. The cornstarch is optional, but it just helps with keeping the cookies hold their shape while it's in the oven. In a separate bowl, add the cold butter and sugar and cream them together. You don't need to cream these for too long, about 1 to 2 minutes is just enough, and don't forget to scrape the sides of the bowl a couple of times. Now I'm going to add the egg and vanilla extract. This is optional, but I'm also going to add a bit of almond extract for that hint of extra flavor, which to me actually makes a big difference, so definitely try adding this if you can. Mix everything together until everything is well combined, and now I'm going to add the dry ingredients in 3 stages, mixing until just combined after every stage. Towards the last stage, you'll notice it will be a bit tougher to mix, so you're going to use your hands to bring the dough together. The texture of the dough should not be too sticky and not too dry. I like to wrap this up in plastic wrap and refrigerate it overnight, or you can freeze it as well. It just needs to come to room temperature before rolling it out. Okay, so before we roll out the dough, I'm going to take some freeze-dried strawberries and place them inside a Ziploc bag so I can crush them a bit. I like to have a mix of small pieces to really tiny pieces just so they fit well into the cookie cutouts. Alright, so I'm going to take my dough and roll it out on a lightly floured surface. Be sure to also lightly flour your rolling pin. You're going to roll it out so that the thickness of the dough is about 1/2 inch thick. Okay, so now I'm going to take the crushed freeze-dried strawberries and sprinkle a bit on top. And now I'm going to take my rolling pin and roll and press it on lightly into the dough. If there are some empty spots, feel free to sprinkle a little more onto those areas and press them in with your rolling pin. Okay, so I have my heart-shaped cookie cutter here, and I'm going to make as many cutouts as I can. Now I'm going to use an offset spatula and carefully remove the hearts, and I'm going to place it on a baking pan lined with parchment paper. Now it's best to put the cutouts in the fridge for at least 10 minutes before putting them in the oven. I'm just gathering the leftover dough to make more cutouts, and I'm just going to repeat the process. You can make any other shapes you want. I'm cutting out some X's and O's here. I love how pretty the red pops out so nicely in these cookies. They look almost like pieces of rose petals, and they give such a beautiful romantic look. Pop them in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 to 14 minutes, depending on how big the cookie is. For your reference, I had these in for 12 minutes. Just note that the longer they are in the oven, the darker the freeze-dried strawberries will get. Let them cool down for a bit before removing them from the pan, and look how beautiful these look. You don't even need to frost them. They are just as delicious without, but just to level these up a bit for Valentine's Day, I'm going to make the cookie icing. It's so simple to make. You just need some meringue powder, which you can easily get on Amazon or your local craft store or grocery store. So to some powdered sugar, I'm going to add the meringue powder and mix these 2 ingredients well together. I'm going to add some water and some vanilla extract as well, and I'm going to use my handheld mixer to mix it together. So you want to get it to a pipeable consistency, and I do want a little flexibility, so I'm going to add a bit more water. test out the peak to see if it holds its shape like this. I'm happy with this consistency, so now I'm going to color the icing and separate the colors into their own bowls. I wanted to do 3 shades of pink, so I'm just going to take some red food coloring and I'm going to gradually darken the color. So it's very important to cover these with plastic wrap because it is cookie icing and it will form a thin crust on top if it's exposed to air. So ensure the plastic wrap touches the top of the frosting to keep it from forming that layer. So I've put the icing in some piping bags fitted with a variety of piping tips. I'll leave the ones I used in the description box below. I'm starting off by creating swirls with the Wilton 2D piping tip. I like to start off with the tip that creates the biggest design and then use the other tips to pipe around them. So I'm just adding some sprinkles here, and since I had some fondant, I used a small letter mold and made some X and O letters, and I'm just topping that on some of the cookies. Decorating the rest of the cookies here. I don't really overthink when I'm piping the icing. It's really easy to make these beautiful, guys. There are so many piping tips you can use to achieve this look. I think the key elements are just having more than one color of icing and maybe at least 2 different piping tips to give it some depth and texture. You can ice some of them or all of them. I actually like seeing a mix of both. Even without the frosting, they have a beautiful rustic look to them. I really like how these turned out and they taste amazing with that hint of strawberry flavor. Let me know if you guys try this recipe out in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching and I'll catch you in the next video.